it's not a huge shock that police in America have not really uh, been fully reformed on how to deal with civilians in many cases where we do have a First Amendment, and so people are allowed to protest peacefully. And sometimes a lot of these protests have been breaking school rules when there's, you can't camp out forever.
Let's take a look at what's happening in the US. Pro-Palestinian protests have swept across the American university campuses, where police have arrested over 500 students after attempting to clear the protest sites. Now, joining us now is Daniel Lipman from Politico. And thank you, Daniel, for giving us your time.
Thanks for having me.
Daniel, there's plenty more going on that we're going to touch on in the US right now, particularly with the trial around Donald Trump's hush money. But let's talk about these arrests. I've been looking at some of the videos on social media, some pretty brutal behavior by the police, arresting professors who are simply just asking why the student is under arrest and then finding themselves rustled to the ground and put in handcuffs. What's going on?
Yeah, America has a tendency to overreact to protests. We saw that with Black Lives Matter 4 years ago, right around this same time in the spring. And we have seen kind of this upsurge in pro-Palestinian students who have been holding, building encampments in their college campuses. On the other side, you do have a lot of Jewish students who do not feel safe on their campuses, and some of the slogans have been anti-Semitic, not a majority, but these college presidents seem to be losing control of their campuses to these protests and to this overactive police response in many cases.
But Daniel, what seems odd is that a lot of staff members, professors, there's a video that's gone viral of a professor of philosophy who's been arrested. She doesn't seem to be violent, but she's been led away in handcuffs. Another one I saw, again, it was a professor who's saying, why is the student being arrested? Next thing she knows, she's literally thrown on the ground by two very aggressive police officers and put into handcuffs. Do we know why staff are being targeted?
Well, we don't know why staff are being targeted. There's always a tension between the administrators of a university who are kind of calling in the police sometimes, but also the lower level staff and faculty, basically management versus employees.
Mm-hmm.
But the police have not been especially well trained on how to deal with people who are just inquiring about, hey, why was this person arrested? So it's not a huge shock that police in America have not really been fully reformed on how to deal with civilians in many cases where we do have a First Amendment, and so people are allowed to protest peacefully. And sometimes a lot of these protests have been breaking school rules when there's, you can't camp out forever. You can demonstrate, but this only adds to the agitation on campus. It doesn't really solve the problem of making sure that both the pro-Palestinian protesters feel comfortable and also the Jewish students feel like they're not getting targeted.
What has been the government's response?
Well, Joe Biden has said that he condemns anti-Semitism on college campuses, but he also said at the same time a few days ago that that anyone who does not understand what the Palestinians are going through, that they also, that they should understand that, and that he condemned people who didn't. And so there's not a federal response, but it's all state by state, city by city that are dealing with these protests. And this comes as graduation is happening in the next few weeks. The University of Southern California canceled its graduation because they were worried that it would get disrupted.
Now, let's move on to another big story in the US. This concerns Trump's hush money trial. It's carrying on today with cross-examination of David Pecker. He's the former National Enquirer publisher. Pecker testified that he agreed to execute a, quote, catch and kill deal. to help Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Can you tell us a little bit about who David Pecker is and what is this catch and kill deal?
So David Pecker was the boss behind the National Enquirer, which was a tabloid publication. Mostly, you'd buy it at the supermarket. You could read stories about aliens, but also you could read stories about celebrities and their affairs. And he was a friend of Trump's. And during the 2016 campaign, there was multiple meetings at Trump Tower where Pecker and Trump's campaign staff agreed that Pecker would be his, quote, eyes and ears, where if he got wind of a woman trying to sell her story about how having an affair with Donald Trump, that he would buy it but not publish it, and so get these women to sign NDAs and exclusivity arrangements, but wouldn't actually get it out in the media. And so this is all part of the effort that he did, and Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer, to pay off Stormy Daniels, which they improperly classified as business expenses or legal expenses instead of porn star payoff in the business ledgers.
Now, Daniel, the Supreme Court have also been meeting to discuss what crimes, if any, can a president be charged with whilst they're in office. They seem to be split, which is perhaps surprising, seeing as quite a lot of them were appointed by Donald Trump when he was president. Where are they at now?
So the biggest takeaway from the Supreme Court session yesterday, where they heard this case about presidential immunity, is that this is going to cause further delays, and so that the multiple federal trials for Trump's documents and also his role in January 6th, that they're likely going to be pushed until after the election. And so whatever political importance they have, if he had gone through them before the election, would be lost. And that's because the Supreme Court has kind of thrown him a lifeline here in terms of weighing whether how much a president can be charged and what types of crimes. It's a very unexplored area of the law because presidents usually don't go, on potential crime sprees like Trump did. And so they are going to probably kick this down to the lower courts for more review, but I don't think they're going to give what Trump wants, which is a total and complete immunity, because some of the things that the lawyers for Trump were arguing were totally ridiculous. Like he could order a drone strike on a political opponent of his, and get away with it.
Extraordinary stuff. Just before we go, Daniel, the trial, I know it's early days yet, but do we know how it's affecting Donald Trump's ratings, his support? A lot of people are saying, there's not a lot of support outside the courtroom. He is using the courtroom to sort of make a statement every day. So it kind of makes up for the fact that he's not out campaigning across the country. But what effect is this trial having on his popularity and his ratings?
Well, they're still doing kind of poll ratings on this, and it hasn't really affected it that much because we haven't seen a verdict yet. And so if there's a verdict, then Trump could be in real trouble, because a lot of Americans, they don't necessarily like Joe Biden. They think he's too old. But on the other hand, Joe Biden is he's not facing a criminal trial. He's not going to be a felon. And there's a very real possibility in a very blue city of New York City that Trump will be found guilty of multiple felonies. And to many Americans, including many 4 in 10 Republicans potentially, that's a bridge too far. And so we haven't really seen it yet, but the trial is still a few weeks away from concluding.
And you don't think, Daniel, that should he be found guilty, it also plays very much to his base and his hand? I mean, he has been talking about how this whole trial has been set up to just prevent him from winning a second term in the White House. It's politically motivated. Every time he gets in trouble with the law, his base seems to have more and more support for him. Do you think that perhaps even if the worst outcome came out for Donald Trump, that actually he'll find a way to use it as a positive?
I'm sure he would do his best to try to do that, but this is unprecedented in terms of he's never faced a scenario where he is likely or there's a good chance of him being actually convicted of a felony criminal charge. And other stuff like the James Comey investigation never led to criminal charges. His impeachment was never fully put into effect. And so that's where this could be definitely different.
Okay. Daniel, thanks so much for giving us your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Daniel Lipman there from Politico.